Hello everyone, welcome back. And today in this video, I wanted to talk a little bit about the rough patch that Barcelona are in currently. And I know in the last couple years, we've been used to Barcelona playing very poorly, but this season you felt like it was going to be a little bit different under Hansi Flick. And the way that they started La Liga, he rejuvenated the team. They looked completely different. They were scoring 4 or 5 goals a game, and they looked so exciting and enjoyable to watch. And in the last 5 games, they've now dropped points in 4 of them. And they have 5 points from 5 games. That's not good enough to win La Liga. If you want to win the league, you obviously have to be getting more points than that. And these points that they have dropped, they've been so preventable. They've been a few games where individual errors have cost Barca, and then there have also been times where Barca have not looked good enough going forward. They look like they don't have control in this game, and even when they do have a lead, it looks like they're at risk of bottling it. That's exactly what happened in the Real Betis game, where they lost the lead thanks to a 94th minute goal, and you can't allow that to happen if you want to win La Liga. So there are a couple topics that I wanted to touch on in this video, so I'll just start doing that now. And the first point that I wanted to talk about is I think some of the excitement that we got from seeing Hansi Flick become the new coach of Barcelona is maybe gone from the players' performances, and I felt like that was the case in this game against Betis because Lamine Yamal, I can't praise him enough for everything he's done this season. He's been the best player on the squad. I mean, Rafinha's been incredible. There have been a lot of great players, but Lamine Yamal is just different, and that was the case. He proved it in this game. Every single player on Barca said, get the ball to Lamine Yamal, see what he can do. And that's exactly what he did to put Barca 2-1 up. And he's one of the players that you felt bad for in that game. There were some players you just felt like didn't put 100% in, and they were the reason ultimately that Barca lost this game. So Barca, they didn't play that well, right? And sometimes you struggle in games. You know, a season is very long. There are 38 games, so you're not going to play your best every single match. But there are some times when you can grind out a result, and that's what wins you titles, when you're not playing your best and you still find a way to get 3 points. And that's what they should have done in this game against Betis. But in the 94th minute, it was, in my opinion, a lapse in concentration from Barca's back line, from the defense, from the midfield as well. I just felt like there was a disconnect there. They let a ball into the box to go in, and Diao with a great finish. And I just feel like in the last couple games, you haven't seen the same energy levels. You haven't seen the same output or going into tackles at 100%. And really, the overall dominance that Barca have had, you haven't really felt it. In that game against Mallorca where Barca scored 5 goals, that was a great performance. And I think offensively going forward, they're creating a ton of chances. But other than that, in the other 4 games that Barca have played in La Liga, they've not played very well. And they've definitely struggled not only to create chances, but also just to maintain control in these games. And sometimes I feel like Marcos and Pedri, they're great at keeping the ball and making sure that Barca are controlling and dominating the game. But it just felt like when players like Pedri and Rafinha, Dani Olmo were taken off the pitch in that game against Real Betis. I know Gavi's just coming back from injury, so I'm going to be, calm with him because he was out for a year. So it's expected that sometimes, he's not going to be back to 100% so quickly. But for me, Frenkie de Jong, it's really difficult to defend that decision to go into the box in a tackle that was unnecessary on Vitor Roque and give up a penalty after only being on the pitch for a couple minutes. You have the captain's armband. You cannot be showing a lack of experience there. Really poor from him. And I just felt like overall in this game, I don't want to just blame one player, but I just felt like that's been the story of the last couple games is that players aren't giving 100%, and it's costing Barcelona. And I feel like that those energy levels that we saw when Hansi Flick initially took over, they've gone down. They've diminished a little bit. So Barca, I would say maybe some people are saying the honeymoon phase is over, which I understand some Barca fans saying that because Barca have definitely looked a little bit different than they did initially under Hansi Flick when you were going into games. And I know he had that preseason and maybe the first game against, I think, Valencia and maybe Athletic Bilbao as well, where maybe Barca didn't play great, but they still found a way to get results in those games. But then after that, it was dominating 4 or 5 goals a game, beating Madrid 4-0, beating Bayern 4-1 in the Champions League. Those are Champions League candidates right there, heavy favorites to win the competition, and Barca completely dominated them. So to go from that and then to getting 5 points in your last 5 games in La Liga, obviously something has went wrong. And I think Barca, the rhythm is not there right now. And the lack of effort, I think, sometimes. And also, it just seems like Hansi Flick isn't as controlled or maybe isn't as calm-headed as we saw him at the beginning of the season. And what we initially thought we were going to see the entire year. It just seems like, he got sent off in the last game. And then I just think, obviously, in the press conference, there's some frustration there that you weren't used to seeing in the first couple months that he was here. And the second thing that I wanted to talk about was the squad depth, because obviously Barca, they did sign a backup goalkeeper. I think that was an efficient signing there because you needed a backup keeper. You went out and signed Szczesny as a free agent. That was great. But I also think there are some gaps in the squad, right? There's not a true backup right back that Hansi Flick seems like he trusts. I don't think he fully trusts Hector Fort yet. And so Koundé's playing every single minute. I think his performances have definitely diminished in the last couple of weeks. I mean, Pau Cubarsí and Inigo Martinez, they have both been class this entire season. But playing 90 minutes every single week, especially Inigo Martinez, who, he's a little bit older in his career, right? And he's definitely struggled with injuries in the past. It's asking a lot from both of these players. And Pau Cubarsí, I mean, he's had some stitches to the face, and he was playing 2 days after that. I mean, that's crazy commitment from him. But also, shouldn't you have a better option than playing someone with stitches that are still in their face? Things like that. I just think the squad depth is going to hurt Barcelona in the long term. And I think that's also the fact that Lamine Yamal had to play 90 minutes, and he was still pushing every single minute to try and get Barcelona the equalizer, because they have no one else in that position that can do anywhere close to what he does, which is obviously expected because he's one of the best players in the world. He's been incredible this season. But also, you want to have some wingers that can maybe come in and try and change the game for Barcelona, and I just don't feel like they have the profiles in the squad. And so the squad depth can be another thing. I think they do have a good amount of midfielders right now, but Marc Casado, Pedri, Gavi, and Frankie de Jong. But I just feel, obviously Marc Bernal would have been huge to have. So I'm not really blaming Barcelona's board completely because, obviously Araujo and Christensen, them being out injured for 6 months also didn't help. But that's one position that I think Barcelona are really struggling to work with right now, because the squad depth is just not good enough for how many games Barcelona are going to have to continue to play. It's going to be every 3 days, for the next few months. And Barca, you really hope that they can keep up with it, because, you're asking so much from all these players that are putting in really 100% effort in every single week. And I feel like that's maybe part of the reason why their performances have been down, because I think Hansi Flick asks a lot from these players to play the style that he wants to play. And so when you don't have rest and you're having to play, every 3 days for 90 minutes, maybe your performances start to dwindle when you're tired and just not getting fully recovered for the next game. The third thing that I wanted to talk about was this Lamine dependencia that a lot of people are talking about. The dependence on Lamine Yamal. And I think Barca, just thinking one of the best clubs in the world, no matter how good a 17-year-old is, you cannot be completely reliant on him to create a chance, to win the game for you. And that's exactly what we saw in that game against Betis. And there are so many class players that are getting paid so much money, that Barca paid so much to sign these players, and the only guy that can do anything in that game is Lamine Yamal. And I know you took out Rafinha and Dani Olmo potentially to rest them for that game against Dortmund coming up, which is a big clash in the Champions League. But this dependence on Lamine Yamal to create a chance every single game, that's really what has hurt Barca when he hasn't been available, because he was out injured for a few weeks. And there was a statistic that I saw which was ridiculous, that Barca, when Lamine Yamal started, had won 36 points out of 36 in La Liga. And then when he wasn't available, when he did not start, they won 1 out of 12. And that was before the last game, so those statistics will change a little bit. But that is brutal. To see that, you cannot depend so much on one player, I think. And that's really, I'm not trying to make comparisons at all. Please don't think I'm trying to make comparisons. But when we watched the last few years of Messi play, there was such a dependence on him, especially under Ernesto Valverde. And he played a 4-4-2, and he just said, Messi, win me the game. And Messi was so good that he ended up doing that. But don't you want to play towards his strengths and maybe give him some help? Give him some runners in behind. And I think that's what Hansi Flick has tried to do with introducing Ferran Torres back into the team, because sometimes Lewandowski, maybe that's just not the striker that he is anymore, that he's making runs in behind every single time he has the ability to. Because Lamine Yamal, he needs runners. And that's why him and Rafinha have worked so well together, because Rafinha, he'll come into the inside and he'll make runs in behind the defense. And that matchup together, that link-up play, has been great. We've seen that Trivela pass a few times to just both of them together. So Lamine has been incredible. I don't want to take anything away from really Hansi Flick and what he's done this season, but Lamine Yamal, without him playing every single week, Barca would be nowhere near the top of the table. I think that's how important he's been this season. It's been very obvious. I think he's up to 9 assists in La Liga, and all of them have been amazing. So to be that dependent on one player, I think, can really make it difficult to get points when he is not on the field. And you don't want that to happen with a 17-year-old. You want Barca's squad to be great overall, so where they don't need to rely on one player anymore. You don't want that to happen again. You want to have world-class players in every position, ideally, but that's just obviously not the position the Barcelona are in right now. So it's one thing that I know a lot of Barca fans are talking about, that there's just such a reliance on Lamine Yamal right now, which I completely understand. Yeah, and Barca, they're going to have to figure out a way to get other players to do well without Lamine on the pitch, or at least without him contributing directly to a goal or an assist. And the fourth thing that I wanted to talk about, which is something that I knew I would be talking about during the season, and I think it was very obvious, and if you watched my videos during the summer, I talked about how important it was for Barca to go and sign a left winger, which is why I really wanted Nico Williams to join the club. And I know a lot of people are linking Rafael Leao and Kvaratskhelia and again Nico Williams for next summer. But Barca, they really should have went into this season signing a left winger. And I saw that Dani Rodriguez from Barcelona's academy is back and healthy. He scored a great goal today, if you all would like to find it on Twitter. He looks like a very interesting profile as a winger, and I just feel like that's the profile that Barcelona are missing. So for me, it's really important to find that profile, and I also don't want to take anything away from what Rafinha has done this season. He has been incredible. He's been one of Barca's best players. He's been one of the most informed and important players in Europe right now because he's scoring almost every single game. He's giving an assist. In big moments, he's stepping up massively for Barca. So, of course, you want him on the pitch, but he is not a true left winger, and we know that. So sometimes the squad just doesn't look very balanced when both Dani Olmo and Rafinha are trying to play centrally, and then Lewandowski and Rafinha are also kind of covering up the same spaces. And then you have that gap where really Barca's left side, they don't attack that much. The only person that's really there as a flank on the left side is Alejandro Balde. And I think his deliveries into the box, they're just not good enough right now. And not taking anything away from Balde, I think he's one of the best in the world in his position. He has so much potential. But right now, currently, he's not someone that can create chances consistently from the left-hand side, from the flank of the left side. So Rafinha, I would really ideally like to play him as an attacking midfielder, and that's what I said under Xavi. I said I think his strengths could really work well in that area, and especially with Lamine Yamal doing as good as he was doing. You wanted both these players to start, and I think they can start together. But that left wing position for me is vacant, and I think that's a really important position that Barcelona, they need to identify for next summer for sure. But you know, you would have hoped that maybe Ansu Fati could get back to some of the form that we saw in previous years. Maybe he could get starts in that position, but it just hasn't worked out so far. I think he's injured again, which is unfortunate. Ferran Torres isn't a true left winger that's going to take people on and create chances. He's more of a runner in behind, which I still think that profile can also be important, especially when you have someone like Lamine Yamal who's so creative and wants runners in behind so he can play the ball to them and open up the other team. That's all great, but I just think that left wing position has really been missing for Barca, and I think Rafinha's quality has definitely covered that up, but I still think if Barca go and sign a top left winger next season, that Lamine Yamal, Rafinha, and someone like, for instance, Rafael Leao could all play together on the pitch, and it would work out very well. So nothing against Rafinha. I think he absolutely should be starting. I mean, he's the second name on the team sheet for me, behind Lamine Yamal. So they've both been great, but I just think that lack of profiles has really hurt Barca. And also, a lot of people are talking about Lewandowski that maybe in the last couple games he hasn't been at his very best. But I think I know what to expect from Lewa, which isn't to light up the pitch, right? It's to score goals. And so I think if the team is playing well and if he's getting chances, that will happen. But when Barca are struggling to win games and they're struggling to score goals at the same rate that they were at the beginning of the season, I understand people's frustration maybe towards Lewandowski, towards the profile that he currently has, and maybe you want to switch something up by throwing Pau Victor in there or Ferran Torres, which maybe at some point in the season, if things continue to not go very well and you're continuing to drop points in La Liga in games that you should be absolutely winning, then I understand maybe Hansi Flick would try and switch something up. But yeah, those are the problems I feel like that are going on currently, and I just think the energy levels aren't there, and I also think that lack of a left winger and maybe the dependence on Lamine Yamal, because I think Barca, they're struggling to create chances aside from the chances that Lamine Yamal himself creates. So yeah, Barca, they've definitely got some issues right now, and I think you have to hope that Barca and Hansi Flick, they can figure this out and they can maybe come up with something new to get back to playing their best, because obviously in the last couple of weeks, this has not been the same team that we've seen that dominated the big teams at the beginning of the season and also was scoring 4 or 5 goals a game in La Liga. But as always, thank you very much. I just wanted to talk a little bit about this video. I might try and make a preview for the game against Dortmund, or maybe just make a video after the Dortmund game. You hope Barca can get 3 points in that game, and as always, thank you very much for watching my video. I really do appreciate it. Hope you all have a great weekend, and VISCA Barca. See you all later. Peace.